Welcome to the afternoon session. So I'm very honored to chair this distinguished panel. I'm Haitian Liu, a professor at PolyU and co-director of our CSAF Center. Allow me to take this opportunity to introduce our panelists first. So firstly, we have Professor Christine Low, the Chief Development Strategist at Institute for Environment at Hong Kong UST. Professor Low was also the former Undersecretary for Environment at Hong Kong SAR government. Next, we have Ms. Jenny Lee. So Jenny is the Undersecretary General for the Hong Kong Green Finance Association. So Jenny is a veteran in global investment banking, and she's the core person to launch a series of sustainable finance certificate programs. I'm sure Jenny will introduce about that. Last but not the least, we have Mr. Jeff Huang. So Jeff is the founder and CEO of AEX Holding. So Jeff was the former vice president at the Chicago Climate Exchange and the former managing director for Greater China at Intercontinental Exchange. So without further ado, so let me prop up the first round of questions. So firstly, may I invite each panelist to say hi and then briefly tell us your general view about this panel's theme, the concept for carbon neutrality. What does it mean in practice? So may I invite Professor Low, please.
Hi, thank you very much for including me on this panel. As Professor Liu said, I am the Chief Development Strategist at the Institute for the Environment at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. I'm kind of a, well, I do research and I do some teaching, but I'm like the glue. My job is to stick people together within the university as well as with people outside the university, especially when we're talking about the challenge of climate change. And there are so many aspects to it. There's the science, engineering, finance aspects that for all of us to really understand what to do to transition to a low carbon world, we need to stick different disciplines and knowledge together. So that's essentially what I do. In terms of what carbon neutrality means, I think probably everyone attending this conference knows that it's a state of net zero CO2 emissions, but that in itself doesn't necessarily mean so much. There is, of course, also net zero climate, which is including other greenhouse gases beyond carbon. So we might want to also look at these together because some of the other greenhouse gases like methane are very powerful gases. I guess at this early stage, I really just want to make one point. There is a lot of discussion in the scientific world now, and policymakers around the world accept this, that holding to the 1.5 degrees is getting very difficult. And we have approximately 9 years to kind of get there, and we're not doing very well at the moment. I personally find that however difficult it is, we are living in the sweet spot of climate for many, many tens of thousands of years. And if we go out of this sweet spot, we don't know what that is going to do with humanity. So it's best that we try to catch up and scale up on everything that we're not doing yet to try to reach 1.5 degrees within a decent time frame, even if we can't quite make it in 9 years. So net zero, carbon neutrality or climate neutrality is very, very important.
Thank you, Professor Low. Next, may I invite Jenny, please?
Thank you for inviting me, Professor Wu and Professor Liu, for joining this discussion. As mentioned, I'm in terms of my role within HKGFM, the Undersecretary General, and then similar to, I guess, Christine, I'm very much like the glue in the society and the economy that brings together the various parties together, such as the private and public sector, government and regulators, academia, to really connect, collaborate, and develop green and sustainable finance policies and products. And we do that very much through active member engagement. So, in terms of Hong Kong Green Finance Association, we now have over 160 Hong Kong-based institutional members, which we organize across 8 working groups to really reflect kind of like the industry sectors that are driving sustainable finance initiatives. If we look at what we have done in this year, and we're supported and organized over 80 green and sustainable financing kind of like events to really build capacity. We've released 3 thought leadership research reports on sustainable finance, and also launched the 2 certificates in sustainable finance training in both English and Mandarin. And so when I kind of like take a step back and think about the question in terms of the concept of carbon neutrality, I'm probably not going to come out from it from an academic standpoint, but more from kind of like the corporate, kind of like the market, kind of like layman. And as they hear this terminology more frequently, yes, they think about the actual science behind it. But I think for them, they're actually looking at how do they reduce their carbon emissions to zero. And these companies and countries that have set their targets, are really looking at through the lens of combining the transition of the operational infrastructure into renewable energy sources, and how they look at supporting these projects, such as reforestation or buying carbon credits, to really reduce their carbon emission footprint to zero or net zero. So I think in practice, what this means is that market participants are now trying to work out, from this big high-level concept of carbon neutrality, how do they develop a credible climate transition plan? How do they demonstrate that they are setting ambitious targets, that they are taking the right steps to reduce these greenhouse gas emissions, and that they are only looking at using carbon offsets to get to net zero when there are no other alternative means that are available. And I think what we're seeing now through this is a transformation of companies in Hong Kong, and also in the finance area, where they're looking at how they can structure different types of green and sustainable financial products to really support this like long-term business transition.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, next, Jeff, please.
Thank you, Professor Liu and Professor Wu for the kind invitation, and I'm very happy to join this panel with Christine and Jenny. I'm coming from a slightly more practitioner background. The AEX is somewhat focused on data analytics and quant solutions for the power sector company. In particular, we work with the renewable wind and solar, in this case, utilities, to make sure they are being helped, they are getting the right solutions in their pathway to energy transition, right? Kind of a broader concept in terms of carbon neutrality. And what we learned over the last 2 years, if I can show, Carrie, if I can show the slide, right? What we learned over the last 2 years, there are 2 major trends going on in the power sector, which is kind of unique, or which offer a stark contrast vis-a-vis developed markets like Europe and North America. And that kind of a dual challenges, right? We talk about energy transition, we talk about carbon neutrality, the energy sector, the power sector played a very important role. But at the same time, these power companies, they're undergoing a stark and somewhat daunting challenges, going through the challenges of a power market deregulation. If you see this data, right, this is the Shandong province spot market. All the companies, the power companies in Shandong, most of them, right, including renewable utilities, are going through this deregulated power market transition. They need to trade. They need to capture more revenues in a market that has, by nature, the power market by nature is quite volatile, right? If you are intermittent solar and power generators, you gotta be very careful. You gotta build your risk profile You got to learn how you trade and compete with other generation units and capture and manage, more importantly, the power market and price volatilities. This is, again, this is a day-ahead price, clear day-ahead price on October 27, exactly 1 month ago, right? And you see negative prices late morning, early afternoons. So if your wind utilities, your solar utilities, how are you going to make money if you can't better position yourself in this kind of volatility, in this kind of market conditions, right? We talk about energy transitions, but all of a sudden, these renewable units in Shandong markets, which is kind of the size of the country of Spain in terms of economic output, right? So all of a sudden, these renewable utilities are faced with, fine, we're going to be, build this generation units, we're going to have to make at the same time the generation from the renewable economically and financially viable. And I said it's starkly different than mature markets in the United States and Europe, in that in those countries, in those markets, the electricity market, the deregulation of the electricity market came first. In China, it came almost at the same time, so that these power companies, even the coal plants, right, they have to manage that price volatilities at the same time going through this energy transition. In Shandong alone, right, there are 20 today installed capacity. There are 24 gigawatts on the distributed solar alone, right? There's another 10 gigawatts in centralized solar. So it's fine, you drive these investments, you build this renewable plants, but at the end of the day, to make these plants economically viable in a deregulated farming, in a deregulated power market, is a huge challenge. So in today's environment, right, you cannot, in China, in the power sector, you cannot just talk about carbon neutrality or energy transitions without understanding the other daunting tasks that these guys have to be dealing with on a daily basis, right? Manage that risk, build that visibility of 5-year power curve so that we can sign this PPA for the renewables, so we can drive new investment in the renewable sector. So I just want to highlight these very different market dynamics that people talk about energy transition in the United States, in Europe, in Japan, and the circumstances are quite different because of the power ongoing and parallel power market deregulation.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. So thanks each panelist for your clear illustration on the carbon neutrality concept from your perspective. So my next question is more focused on the carbon neutrality goal in Hong Kong. So we know that in his recent 2022 policy address, the chief executive says, in order to achieve the goal of carbon neutrality before 2050, Hong Kong needs to reduce the total carbon emissions by 50% before 2035 from the 2005 level. So my question is, do you think it is an easy target to meet? So having taken into account the Hong Kong's actuality, so what do you think are the opportunities or hindrances for Hong Kong to achieve that goal? Christine.
Yeah, well, those are big goals. They are made based on certain assumptions. And I think it's important for people, both individuals like ourselves, as well as institutions and companies, to understand what that assumption is. Now, Hong Kong's electricity is provided by 2 electricity companies. And the 2 electricity companies operate essentially under contract with government. And I think it's well known in Hong Kong that from 1997, the government has decided not to allow any more coal plants. And the origin of that impetus to stop new coal plants was because of air quality. But over time, air quality and carbon neutrality has kind of dovetailed. Now, our current electricity contract with the two companies expires in 2033. So now the date is 2035, right? So the assumption, because the commitment of carbon targets is made by the government. The government has made certain assumptions. The assumption is that the new contract after 2033, which will be negotiated obviously some years ahead of 2033, because these contracts do take time to discuss, particularly these new contracts that are coming. Because what the government wants is for the two companies to really be able to beef up their clean energy provision. Now, we can only really do that in two ways. One is we have a lot more clean power generated in Hong Kong. Right now, 28% of our electricity overall comes from nuclear power from a particular plant across the border in Daya Bay. So 28% of our electricity is clean power. Now, the other thing that is going to be happening at the same time during this particular contract is that the coal plants are being replaced. So we will have more natural gas plants. So between now and 2033, we'll actually have further replacement of coal by gas. So there'll be some decarbonization, significant decarbonization from that. However, going into the next contract, right, after 2033 to 2035, we really need either more and much more locally generated clean power, or we need to be able to buy clean power from the mainland. Now, this is the big assumptions. What are we going to be able to buy from the mainland? Now, you can see from the government's plan that we will have a little bit more renewable energy and waste to energy being provided within Hong Kong, but they will not be significant enough to meet those targets, right? So we need more clean power from China by 2035, that's number one. Number two is that power is probably going to be quite expensive. I mean, today we're already talking in Hong Kong about having to put up energy prices, right? By quite a significant margin. So what we need to do in Hong Kong, anticipating that clean power in the future will be more expensive, is to work really, really, really hard on energy efficiency and energy saving, right? So that we lower the overall consumption. We are probably not yet, we don't have the right policy tools to really do that. So maybe I can just stop here. Maybe people will add some more to this picture.
Yeah, that's extremely interesting. So I think we have only 10 years to get all the things right. Yeah, thank you. So may I invite Jenny, please? Yeah.
Sure. Look, I think alongside what Christine Low said in terms of all the work that needs to be done to make this transition, I'll answer the question more from the government like financing and sustainable financing perspective. To date, the Hong Kong government's issued $37 billion worth of green bonds to date to really support this transition and to help fund a lot of Hong Kong's transition in from waste management, renewable sources, buildings, transportation, etc. And we've now seen that the Financial Services Treasury Bureau announced only last week that it now plans to expand its issuance of government green bonds to be more than fivefold in the next 5 years to help generate the capital that's going to be needed to drive this change. Because for a lot of these businesses and industries, yes, they can increase their costs and pass these on to consumers, but then they themselves will have a direct impact in terms of their operating expenses. So I do think that is one of the support features that the government is providing right now for these companies, in addition to addressing some of the ESG talent. So whilst we have all this transition that's required, you also need the technical expertise as well to help, the electric companies, the transportation companies to really move and change their business operations. And so, again, another factor to be aware of is that the government has announced the launch of the 3-year pilot program to provide financing to support the training and knowledge for professionals in ESG talent. And so I think from my perspective, I'm quite excited to see how sustainable financing product innovation will evolve in terms of as the next opportunity to help support these businesses. As I guess we've heard earlier, if you've got this is an energy transition, there are a lot of hard to abate sectors that typically will not receive fundings, and it's very difficult to receive funding from bank loans and the capital markets. And so we will see, I think, in the next, say, 6 to 12 months, the emergence of transition finance to reflect the broader range of investments that will be needed to support the whole of the economy to move towards this transition. And so, I think from that perspective, whilst there are also challenges in this implementation in terms of having the right standards and frameworks that will allow this comparability and interoperability of this type of financing, I think with the launch of the G20 Transition Finance Framework a few weeks ago, I think that sets a starting foundation to enable this type of innovation and product innovation to come through.
Thank you, Jenny, on your sharing on the finance-driven impetus. So next, Jeff, please.
Yeah, I'm not qualified to comment on the policies in Hong Kong, but I just wanted to add maybe a few remarks to what Christine just said about the possibility of buying more renewable from China, let's say from Guangdong province, for example, in the GBA a wide markets, right? If you look at the data, by the end of the current 14th 5-year plan, which ends at the end of 2025, right? The Guangdong province alone will have additional 20 gigawatt of additional installed capacity for solar. And then last year, out of the total offshore wind installation, new installation in 2021, a third happened in Guangdong, right? So I don't know, eventually these going to be some of the supplier generators that's going to be coming over into Hong Kong, or even Hong Kong could be potentially be integrated into the GBA power markets. So you can buy and purchase this renewable. But one thing that can be done, and one thing I think, frankly, even this city like Shenzhen and maybe Guangdong in general, they're thinking that of all these renewable that's going to be coming on stream, many of the many of the new units are not going to be receiving any government feed-in tariff, right? Subsidy. So you may make some argument about the additionality of these renewable energy attributes, right? And if somebody in Hong Kong, the civil society, the banking, the regulators, the university, probably you would say, hey, how do we adopt international best practices, right? Registry standards, high integrity, additionality, permanence, whatever, right? How do we generate, register, and issue with full data transparency some of these Guangdong projects? So maybe we can start to build a real market, a liquid market, an international stock market, so that some of these green energy attributes from the Greater Bay Area could be used legitimately by the ESG buyers, by the international supply chain companies in China, in GBA, or the financial firm in Hong Kong. They're buying international REC anyway, right? Maybe very small portion of the Scope 2 is covered by international REC. But you have a big next door neighbor who has a power market is bigger than Germany, right? Who are coming out. There's a lot of renewable stream are coming on stream. So there's a very real chance, I think, that some of these things, some of these activities could be integrated. So Hong Kong benefits because you have a source of a credible high integrity, potentially, by international standards coming out of Guangdong. And Guangdong, the energy market, the power market, the green markets could be further integrated. This could be a first use case for the so-called Carbon Connect. A lot of experts over the last 2 years talk about Carbon Connect, but how you implement Carbon Connect between Hong Kong and Guangdong, and I think there would be could be a use case that benefit both Guangdong and benefit Hong Kong at the same time.
Can I just add something here? Because I think the three of us have all put our fingers on some aspect of this transformation that is really important, and they need to be stitched together. So I started off just by talking about the electricity supply, right, which is under contract. Yeah. Can you imagine if we will be doing some of the things that Jeff is talking about, the structure and nature of those contracts will have to be changed. Now, this is actually a really big thing for Hong Kong, the companies, and the government. We're going into, a new set of situations. So I think the earlier that the government and the power sector explores with Guangdong, really what can be done, and that could lead to the kind of transformation that allows what Jeff is talking about, right? Because, I mean, the point I really just want to emphasize is we can have ideas, but these ideas cannot be realized until the major stakeholders can kind of stick them together in some ways that make sense, right? And then there is the financing component that Jenny talks about. The government is going to in Hong Kong and the government in Guangdong, they're going to need a lot of money to do both mitigation and adaptation, right? Of which energy becomes really, really important, and how to make sense kind of it all. So this is like the gazillion-dollar challenge for us, very exciting, and we need all to put our heads together.
Yeah, fully agree. Yeah, this market structure and contract design is indeed a big topic. So yeah, I can see that there are audience raising hands, but we still have some general questions for the panelists. Yeah, I know that most of the audiences are the corporate executives. So this question, let's focus on carbon neutrality in action for companies. So for companies that start to think about achieving carbon neutrality targets, so what steps or actions does it need to take? So where do you suggest that they start from? So may I start with Christine, please?
I think there's a lot of energy precisely with your question, because companies bigger and smaller are doing that right now because they see that there is pressure to respond. And I'm sure Jenny can say more about that. The first thing I think for a company is really to find out what's your baseline. I mean, what are you emitting at the moment, to do an environmental and carbon health check, so to speak. Now, in a way, you can hire a consultant to do it. The methodologies for measurements are relatively straightforward today. You just have to pay a bit of money, to get that done. But then the hard work starts after that. The leadership of an organization then have to think, what are you going to do to decarbonize? What are you going to do? What kind of time frame and targets are you going to set? Now, you should, of course, take into reference the government's timelines and targets. So within, let's say, between now and 2025 on energy, what can you do? Between now and 2035, what can you do on carbon? So there's an iteration of what you can do. If you own a lot of assets, meaning if you own a lot of buildings, you've got to decarbonize that. But the other thing is, in your business itself, whatever your business is, maybe your business is in technology, maybe your business is in tourism, maybe your business is in food supply, or maybe manufacturing. In each one of those, you will have to think more and more about all that business itself, how you are going to decarbonize and make decarbonization, including innovation, how you're going to innovate to be your competitive edge.
Indeed. Yes, Jenny, please. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Look, I echo everything that Christine has said. I do believe commitment at that board level is going to be essential, really for that governance oversight and responsibility for measuring and keeping kind of like this long-term pathway. It's like 20 to 30 years potentially, and the firm committed and into the carbon neutrality targets have been set. I think establishing for these corporates, establishing a dedicated team to help support and build capacity in ESG knowledge and the technology infrastructure required to capture, report, and measure the progress is essential. What we're finding through our members is that many are only just building the teams. Historically, these dedicated, I guess, ESG members were sitting within like CSR, like corporate social responsibility. They're now having to adapt and then to learn not just the responsibilities within their own unit, but to understand it across the entire divisions within the organization itself. The other aspect is that we often hear many of the companies and corporates asking, what are credible science-based targets? How do they set these ambitious targets? There are a number of associations out there that can help and support corporates in this way. You have the SBTI, which is the Science-Based Target Initiative, CDP, Climate Disclosure Project, CBI, Climate Bonds Initiative, and TPI, Transition Pathways Initiatives, that can help through their guidance and guidelines and questionnaires provide corporates with at least a starting point to internally assess, like, how do they generate this pathway to net zero over a period of time. And perhaps that's kind of like the first starting point before they actually go out to tap into a consultant to help them with the process, because obviously, with external consultants, the costs may be quite prohibitive for smaller corporates and local SMEs to actually be able to afford. And so starting off at the board and then creating I guess a team to help come up review internally the process is a good starting point. The other aspect, I guess, in terms of what we are doing as HKGFA, and we are going through and working on a number of capacity building type training series, specifically looking at transition finance, where we are working and looking at where the kind of different foundational aspects are. How do you assess your net zero targets? Who are the main key players? What can the consultants do to provide support? What type of transition or financial instruments are applicable? So, we are at the moment helping and working with our corporate members in terms of, and also our financial institutions to help assess and cover and mitigate and to generate a pathway and plan. It's obviously a very long process. I think one of the key challenges for a lot of these corporates, not just only of the cost, but also access to data, being able to measure and capture their carbon footprint accurately. And so, as part of the cross-agency steering group Center for Green and Sustainable Finance, we have also been gathering this information and I guess the gaps within the industry and filtering that back to the center, so that now the center's launched recently a climate-related data repository for physical and transition risk, and also a repository for capacity building to help provide, I guess, some more information and more transparency to support the industry in this transition.
Thank you, Jenny. So very useful advices. So may I invite Jeff, please?
Yeah. So I just want to maybe add a real trade in Hong Kong that we did, just to illustrate that some of these institutions in Hong Kong, not only they are very proactive and progressive in inventorying or monitoring their carbon footprint, but also already started to look at the possibility of offsetting, right? To take some action, maybe small, maybe just testing waters, but they wanted to understand what they can do from a mitigation perspective that Jenny talked about, right? And even some of the SOEs listed in Hong Kong or operating in Hong Kong are also becoming active in the international offset markets. So this particular trade that we did in 2021 in August, that we matched, actually, we arranged the buyers of the offsets in Hong Kong. They use these offsets international standards. You know, we happen to choose CORSIA, the International Aviation Sector Carbon Reduction Program, the CORSIA eligible CCER forward. It's a forward trade with a prevailing price on international regulated futures exchange. And the seller is a renewable investor project manager from China, right? So in the joint press release, I just want to highlight maybe two, three key points to illustrate when you do mitigation, when you do use offsets to mitigate, to offset some of the carbon footprint in Hong Kong, these 2 or 3 key points. So Mr. Wang is the head of the Airlines Carbon Asset Management Division. And he was quoted in the joint press release that they would like the opportunity to work with institutions in Hong Kong to build a robust, high integrity CCER global benchmark. So there are 3 things, right? 2 or 3 things. High integrity, right? Obviously, you need, maybe we'll touch this later on, but they want what they're selling over people in Hong Kong buying out of the CCER to comply, the standards to comply with international standards. Today, these days, we talk about core corporate principles or different permutations, but they wanted these trades to be done, the quality of the offsets to comply with international standards. And they also happen to mention a robust, globally referenced, potentially in future, benchmark. And the 2 hallmarks of a robust benchmark, of any commodity benchmark, is number 1, you have at least a 5-year forward carbon price curve. And number 2, related to that, right, very healthy open interest from the institution traders, right? So this is like, over a year ago. So I think in the future, the mitigation, the offsetting perspective, what is required in Hong Kong, in China, CCER or VCS gold standards. I think in Hong Kong or in Asian jurisdictions, what's needed is that the longer term price visibility. So both the corporate buyer of these international standard high integrity offsets and the seller of projects from China could start today to make a 5-year, 3 years, longer term financial planning based on that robust benchmark. So I don't think people could go into a energy transition or over the long haul, right, without that kind of a robust benchmark. So I just want to highlight these 2 or 3 key elements of mitigation that's important both for Hong Kong and I think both for Hong Kong and China.
Okay, so yeah, congratulations, Jeff, for an AEX for facilitating the world's first offshore forward trade of high integrity carbon credits from China. So I can see that there are audiences raising their hands. So I think that we'll have a last question, also related to your point. After that, we take the questions. So the last question is like apart from the reducing the emissions, you talked about the purchasing the carbon credits to make up for the green gases. So it has emitted. So the money should be used to fund the action somewhere in the world that remove the same amount of carbon out of air. So in your opinion, could carbon offsets help reducing emissions, or are they just one more tool for greenwashing, because this is also related to the CE's recent policy address to develop Hong Kong into an international carbon market. If we want to achieve that goal, so who needs to act? So may I invite Jeff to comment more on that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to be practical, right? Last year, the international offsets, I totally understand the greenwashing problem, right? Not only you have a greenwashing in general, but you also have some people that are actually, tokenizing the subprime credits, from the crypto community. But being practical, what I meant by that is you look at the global picture, right? Last year, international offsets trade amounts to about $2 billion US, right? That's almost like a 4 or 5-fold increase over the previous years. And according to McKinsey, by 2030, that offsets VCM markets, voluntary carbon market would exceed $50 billion US, right? And you look at China, where I'm in Beijing, right now. So you look at China, over the last few years, almost 60 billion tons of CCER were traded, right? In 2021, at the end of 2021, for the first year of the national ETS compliance, 30 million out of the 60, 30 million tons of CCER were traded, right? I'll be first to tell you that there's probably a gap between the standards today of CCER and maybe some of the core carbon CCP eligible or international offsets, right? But from a Hong Kong perspective, right, the question ought to be, as China restarts the CCER registration next year, right, and then the market could easily be expanded into 400 million tons, according to some estimation from experts, right? So for me, I like to work with stakeholders in China. I like to work with stakeholders in Hong Kong, like you, right, like Jenny and Christine. And how do we come together and bring the standards and bridge that gap of the perceived or maybe real quality gap, standard gap between the CCER today? I'm not sure. I'm not saying it won't be increasing, and I'm sure it will be increased in the future, right? And get the stakeholders to work together so that the future projects, offset project, could start to have a little bit more data transparency, a little bit more civil society participation from Hong Kong even, right? From the University in Hong Kong, from the University in Beijing, Shanghai. So these kind of ecosystem, right, could be improved with data transparency and receive increased standards. So all of that can be done, I think, rather than just say, oh, these guys are criticizing something is easy. Getting involved and getting change, getting it raised is difficult, right? So I like to see more participation from our friends in Hong Kong, from our own company, from other people, from Christine and Jenny, so these standards in due course will be raised.
Thank you, Jeff. Christine and Jenny, do you have any add-on to this question?
No, I'm worried we're running out of time because I think we have like 3 or 4 people. Maybe we should hear their questions.
Sure. Okay, so may I take the question from the audience, please? I can see the raising hand from Irene Pui. So Irene?
Actually, earlier it's mentioning about, decarbonate, innovate, and also build a ESG team to delegate the work, the concept, and build the training knowledge on ESG. My problem I encounter at the moment is internally when we are talking about ESG, most of the time they would think, oh, ESG relate to HR, relate to community service, and the message across abroad to all divisional or business unit is quite rare. And so that is one of the areas I'm thinking how we can penetrate that knowledge to the business unit and make them integrate the ESG concept into the business operation?
Jenny, you want to take that question?
Sure. I think the way to approach this will be to look at all the regulatory and disclosure requirements that are becoming effective and mandatory for not just listed companies, but also unlisted. And I think if you take that to management to then say, look, here you've got TCFD requirements, and then you will now have the ISSB, potentially the International Sustainability Standard Boards, that combines both, I guess, the Global Reporting Initiative and the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. So, you have to take it really from, I think, the obligations and regulatory requirements that will come onto firms in the next 2 to 3 years. And by taking it to that level, the board themselves will have a responsibility at a governance level to take this into account. And also there will be, I think the other area to consider is the investor aspect as well. Investors are also demanding, whether or not it's a shareholder, whether or not it's, a private investor, we're all demanding and wanting to see companies make that transition. And as I mentioned before, it must come from the board level in terms of that level of support, because otherwise you'll find it very hard to drive in isolation in your own department, kind of an agreement of the approach across all your other units. And I've seen this very much even evolve from the corporate social responsibility department, where they look at community networks, they look at gender, etc. But it needs to be taken and broadened far greater than that to then now cover the environment as well.
Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, I can see there's a question from the chat box from Lan Chi Hong. And she said, it seems there's no guidelines or timelines or benchmarks we could recommend for SME or public to lower the carbon and deeper knowledge of ESG. How do we do about that? Yeah. Anybody wants to?
Well, just a simple thing, actually at the university level, and also I think with HKMA, the Monetary Authority, the regulators are interested to look at something that may be simplifiable for SMEs. Now, this is going to take some time actually to sort out, because it is actually quite complicated. But what I would suggest to an SME is you have all your energy related bills. So your electricity, your if you do transportation, or you hire cars for whatever purposes and so on, you will have bills. You will have bills that relates also to your purchases of things, paper, plastic, whatever, right? So those become your first level of information for doing carbon assessment. But I would suggest to an SME that hasn't quite started the process yet to already just go for your electricity and your energy bills from year, if you can match them from year to year, that will give you at least a basic understanding of what is required. I mean, there will be, I think, more assistance coming to assist SME in the future, but perhaps Jenny is closer to the markets than I am.
Yeah, sure. Look, just quickly to update everybody, under the Cross-Agency Steering Group Centre for Green and Sustainable Finance, the data work stream are currently looking at constructing a survey for SMEs specifically to assess, cover their knowledge and also where they are in the transition process. And that will likely be distributed to all the SMEs, hopefully towards the end of the year. We're in the final stages of just developing the questionnaire. And from there, we'll be able to then assess, come up where the gap is and what additional support will be required. The other area which I would suggest the SMEs to take a look at is on the Centre for Green and Sustainable Finance repository on the HKMA website. They do have a list of training courses for ESG, for sustainable finance, that some are free, some are paid for. But then if we are looking at going into next year, where there will be this pilot program subsidy for training, definitely take a look at that, so that you can then access some funding from the government to help your employees also get up to speed. So there are a number of supporting factors. Take a look at the HKMA website, Centre for Green and Sustainable Finance, and if you want to, feel free to also contact HKGFA myself. I'm more than happy to share more information offline. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Christine. So I think that our time is up. So I would like to thank all of the panelists for presenting us such an inspiring session. So I hope we all learned a lot. So I think that nicely concludes this session. And please keep watching us. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
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 So let's continue. We are going to move to the last section, which is the ESG talent and capacity building. As you can see, the last topic is quite different from other three. So the reason we dedicated one session on the ESG education, because we think it's a very, very important issue for Hong Kong, for universities, as well for industries. Today, we have a perfect combination of 4 panel members to discuss this issue. Actually, 2 guests are from the accounting profession who have extensive experience in ESG-related business. And we also have 2 members from academic who have research and teaching experience in ESG-related topic. So let me first introduce our panel members. Our first panel member, Ms. Loretta Fang. Hello, Loretta is an ESG service leader and a government and public sector leader at PwC, Hong Kong and Great Bay Area. She is also the current president of the Hong Kong Institute of Certified Public Accountants. She has more than 25 years working experience in accounting profession. Welcome, Loretta. So our second panel guest, Jasmine Lee. Jasmine is managing partner of the EY in Hong Kong and Macau, oversee all aspects of business operations, of course, including ESG service in this area. Jasmine has more than 25 years of working experience in both Hong Kong and mainland China with financial institutions or on all aspects of accounting and finance related strategies and activities. Welcome, Jasmine.
Thank you, Professor.
Our third panel member, Professor Veronique J.A. Nafan Venus. Hopefully, my French is, I have no idea, but hopefully it's right. Okay. So Dr. Veronique is a seasoned financial market professional with over 20 years of banking and financial market experience. Currently, she is associate professor at business school at Hong Kong UST. She is executive director, career development, and corporate outreach for the School of Business and Management at Hong Kong UST, associate director of undergraduate program, and co-director of the Bachelor of Science in Sustainability and Green Finance. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Our last but not least the guest is Professor Harry Wu. Harry is Associate Professor at Department of Accountancy, Faculty of Business at Ningnan University. He teaches financial statement analysis and ESG issues in business. His research interests including accounting disclosure, banking, sustainability and environment, and behavioral finance. Dr. Wu has been a CFA charter holder since 2008. Welcome, Dr. Wu.
Thank you, Professor Wu.
Welcome all of our panel members. Thank you for your support. And let's, without further ado, let me first invite Ms. Loretta Fang to share her thoughts on this education issue on ESG.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Wu. I'm very delighted to have this opportunity to share my view in relation to ESG and sustainability, finance capability building, and talents. Obviously, this is a very hot topic over the past 3 years, especially after COVID. I guess currently it is actually unavoidable to understand something about ESG. And apparently a lot of the large corporations having learned about ESG and trying to do something about it. However, they haven't been able to do that. So in this very short presentation, I think it's going to take approximately like 10 minutes or so. I'm just going to share with you what the business world is demanding for ESG talents, and is there any gaps that has been identified in the expectations versus what has been available in terms of education programs so far, and what opportunities the tertiary institutions or other organizations may have in terms of developing ESG talents. Well, maybe I should actually start off with a survey that is being conducted by HSBC. HSBC apparently is a very renowned brand. It has done a survey last year in relation to sustainable financing and investing. The Asia bit of it actually reveals some very interesting facts. While we have always been talking about ESG and how that actually impacts all the reporting and also the assessment of their investments, etc. On the top of the priority, 41% of the business leaders consider that the lack of specialized talent and expertise is in fact the barrier when it comes to goals of strategies around sustainability. So it only comes to second that the lack of comparability of ESG data across issuers is considered the most important thing. So you'll see that, talent development in relation to the ESG topic is in fact in the heart of the business leaders, and they truly believe that there is a lack of ESG talents in the market. But actually, what does that really mean in terms of the ESG jobs that are available in the market? Does that mean that does that mean that you are an engineer and trying to understand how to change that light bulbs of a particular office or anything like that? So, but I need to say that, there are currently the variety of ESG related jobs are many, and I'm actually summarizing it in this second slide. If we are talking about popular ESG jobs in the market, I probably would divide it into like 4 different pillars. The first pillar being like sustainable finance. I think every one of you would have heard about like green finance and green bonds and blue bonds, etc., etc. And a lot of times, all these green bonds and in green investments is linked to certain KPIs in relation to ESG. So what we are seeing lacking and also very consistent with what is being included in the HSBC report is that there are should be some officers and the commercial bank and the investment firms helping in relation to the issuance of sustainable finance instruments such as like green loans and the green bonds, and also the formulation of sustainable finance strategy. And of course, while we were talking about a lot of the sustainable investment research and development of the relevant financial products, like how actually those ESG targets and KPIs could be linked to these financing options, those were the things that are considered necessary for the banks and the financial institutions when they were considering getting into the sustainable finance business. And as you can see, in terms of the skill and knowledge, the principle of frameworks on sustainable finance would be considered very important for these type of job opportunities. Secondly, we can talk about it must be investing. Other than giving out loans, I guess the second thing that we should think about, we could be thinking about, would be like responsible investing, right? Sustainable and impact investings. Understand that currently, for example, like family office, PE funds, or some AWMs, all these various investment branches, they are the ones who are actually considering investment ESG investing. And if you ever come across saying that, oh, a particular fund or a particular entity, they do not have a ESG investment policies and procedures, you must be thinking that something is lacking. So what sort of job opportunity there are? Those would be considered like ESG specialists or also analysts at the investment management companies, such as, all these big names like BlackRock and, JP Morgan's, etc. I mean, the purpose of the job of these type of jobs would be to formulate or advise the responsible and impact investment strategy. And also, they would be considering conducting ESG due diligence would be important for any new investment of acquisition. From time to time, I mean, previously, for a firm like, I'm from PwC, for a firm, a Big Four, we would be conducting like financial due diligence for the acquisition targets. But now the request is more than just acquisition targets of looking at their financial statements. Other than they could be looking at IT, etc. Now that they were looking at ESG. I mean, for that particular acquiree, what are their ESG benchmarks? I mean, how far are they up to in terms of their decarbonization? And how much carbon emissions, those investees are. So things like that is very interesting, and we can see that there are trends increasingly with that demand, and also KPIs for screening and monitoring these type of like investees. The third pillar that I'm thinking about would be like ESG reporting and rating and strategy. You may note that there are a lot of different like ESG rating out there, like MSCI rating, and a lot of like others that are available. But like how to assess all these particular ratings and how to analyze companies' information to assess the performance against all these rating methodologies. There is a demand there. So, I mean, for this, we can see that, these type of like consulting firms and rating agencies, they would be looking for ESG consultants and also particularly collating all these information to do better analysis and do peer comparisons. And of course, if you are as a corporation, you would need to make sure that related this type of like ESG reporting and disclosures are actually making available. With this, the type of skills and knowledge that is needed would be like understanding the reporting frameworks and the various standards out there available. You all know that now that ESG or sustainability standard is still not unified yet. So a lot of like different things that you would need to look at and do and trying to compare all these various companies. And of course, in relation to this job nature, research and data processing and analytics would be considered very important. The last but not the least, I think it would be in relation to the actual climate change. I'm not an environmental specialist, but my firm would have like people who have studied climate at their universities. So with the fact that if you really want to take action and trying to do net zero, you would need to think about not just having those slogans saying that you're going to be net zero. You need to have a strategy and you need to have a roadmap. You need to know what targets that are considered achievable, and you need to set the plan for getting the company to be this target. So you see that specialists and specialists in relation to these of climate change, also conducting climate scenario analysis and developing and designing like climate resilience strategy and plan would be considered very important. So I would say that, you can see that with such particular diagram that I've shown here, a lot would need in the whole ESG strategy. It could consider like finance knowledge, carbon, climate, environmentalist, engineering knowledge, many things. So I would need to say that there is actually a big market out there. But what are the trends that we are seeing here in the ESG talent market? So something very obvious, the demand for ESG talents definitely outgrows the supply, especially over the past 3 years. And the hiring rate for ESG talent outpaces the non-ESG counterparts. So that would mean that there is a big demand for the ESG talent as compared to the non-ESG talents. However, you will be probably thinking that, okay, if that is the case, is there a possibility of transforming the existing non-ESG talents into ESG talents so that as to meet the demand and meet the market, right? That transition from non-ESG to ESG industry apparently is too slow. That is very obvious. We'll see that, I mean, LinkedIn actually had conducted a global green skills report talking about all these various skills that are required under the various jobs. Some of them, they are green jobs and very obvious. For example, sustainability manager, solar consultant, ecologist, very apparent that they are green jobs. But there are a lot of jobs that are getting greener. Things like, for example, construction manager. I'm sure that you will understand that why that is, because building is one of the biggest emitters of carbon in the world. So you would need to understand decarbonization as a construction manager and what sort of building materials to use. Technical sales representative and like regulatory and affairs consultant, stuff like that. So there are jobs, actually the nature, in fact, had changed. But currently, there is a lot of shortage in terms of like how to do environmental remediation, recycling, and various type of wind and solar energy and technology. OSHA is the US, the Occupational and Safety and Healthcare Administration. So they have a specific set of principles in that relation, and that is more in relation to the social aspects. What are the ones that with a better balance? I would need to say that, because of all these awareness that have been brought, and also the programs that has been provided to our by the universities, renewable energy, environmental awareness are there. But actually, how to make use of all these, theories and put them into like implementation, that is something that I think a lot of the talents would be needed to help the existing business world to get into net zero. This is my last slide. This basically outlines what we have found in terms of the ESG related certifications. I'm actually dividing them into like four buckets. Those offering overarching sustainability program. The ones with pink in color are overseas. The ones that are actually in red are the ones offered by the Hong Kong institutes. So you can see that Hong Kong U has been having like Master of Sustainability, Leadership and Governance, etc. And then for investment related, Hong Kong SI is offering various like programs in relation to investments. And of course, Hong Kong U, Poly U has also been offering a certificate in ESG reporting. Seems to be the only one that is available here in Hong Kong for ESG reporting. There are other thematic programs, for example, that is more building and construction related in, for example, the TRUE program for zero waste certification, etc. And those would primarily be covering waste management, recycling, and also renewable energy, such as solar and wind technology. So with this background, I mean, here is a snapshot of what we have seen, but with what I've just explained, for the needs of the ESG talent market, my recommendation, or maybe my slight observation, is that you'll see that some of those overseas programs are actually relevant. For example, the thematic programs, which are more related to renewable energy, etc., which is actually in higher demand. We may consider like bringing some of those overseas programs and make it available in Hong Kong. Because Hong Kong, with this Climate Action Plan 2050, and also the huge demand in China, I believe that Hong Kong would be in its best place, being an international city, in order to help Hong Kong, both Hong Kong and China, to transition. I guess that's the end of my presentation. Thank you, Professor Wu.
Thank you, Loretta. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge on the shortage of talents, of qualified ESG staff, and job opportunity and required skills for ESG talents, as well as a gap between the education and the real business. Finally, you talk about the ESG certification issue. I think they are all very informative. We're sure that we will have questions for you after the introduction. Okay, so let's get to the second speaker, Jasmine. Please welcome you to share your thoughts.
Thank you for having me here, and also be sharing with all of our audiences on some of my thoughts in this very important topic, the talent capability building for sustainable finance and ESG. I guess this is a very critical topic, and coming from EY. We day in and day out, discussing with clients and observing the overall trend on how ESG is actually it's being conducted right now. I mean, and it's having a lot of progress, I would say. And in my short briefing, I guess we're going to have more questions and Q&A session. I can share more of my thoughts. I guess I'm probably will be overlapping some of this the stuff that Loretta has been actually talking about, but I'm actually also sharing other views, which I probably are obtaining from my more daily exposure with my clients and some of the other encounters that I have been actually seeing throughout this probably past 12 to 24 months. So the first slide, I guess, hopefully I have actually compiled a couple of slides that actually demonstrate there is a pressing need actually for this talent to be really necessary in this market, and a lot of this demand is actually stemming from the push, of our regulator. As a lot of you actually will be aware, our regulators have been doing really well, and I think they will also have a need because of the global trend as well, that they are actually pushing very much to our industry, also to some of our also our institutions, including financial institutions or listed companies, to be doing very well in this area. And I hopefully running through these few slides, and after I briefly described it, you actually see the need and opportunity for this ESG talent is really increasing at a very enormous speed. Now, for example, on the first page, as you can see, the Hong Kong stock exchange is actually having a lot of requirements starting from 2019. They have been actually requiring listed companies to do their disclosure. And at that time, the disclosure is still probably at a more qualitative, manner, and probably more, I would say, more basic, not very detailed, but it actually also covers governance and management and disclosure. Now, in November, 21 last year, they actually published, a bigger requirement to our listed companies. And publish the guidance on climate disclosure. They're actually requiring listed companies to be pushing and really disclosing more, and that is actually also in relation to the TCFD, the Task Force on Climate-related Financial Disclosure recommendation. So as you can see, from the 4 boxes there, probably similar to what they have actually have been requiring the companies to do, but definitely this requirement, from 2021 onwards, and which they are actually saying you will have to be implemented before 2025. Those requirements are a lot more strict and a lot more extensive, and the expectation is high. So companies are required to do a lot on, governance description on how they're actually, approaching this important topic. How is their board leading this? What is the tone at the top? What exactly they have been doing? So this is the governance part. Also, they are requiring companies to really detail and disclose a lot on strategy. So when you require a listed company to do disclosure on strategy, definitely you will be actually expecting the listed companies to really be very serious on setting up the strategy in the very beginning. So again, we have been actually seeing a lot of opportunities and engagements coming up in relation to listed companies requiring consultants to do strategy and also to do roadmap, okay, to help them to really reach their decarbonization target and really be able to disclose something meaningful, okay, and not lagging behind their peers. So this is the strategy bit. Now, they're also very, very importantly, they also require, just listed companies to do risk management disclosure. Now, this is very important because this is the real thing that our stakeholders, regulators, and our investors are very, very attentive to. How the company is actually doing all this risk management, whether be it their own sort of like green plan, or whether be it like, for example, in my background, the financial institution, how are they actually managing their portfolio of their customers in understanding how they manage their decarbonization target and make themselves green, and how is that going to impact, all right, the financial institutions by itself. So all this risk management are also requiring a lot of exercises and engagements to work on, and as well, and then indirectly, they need a lot of talents to do it. And then finally, the matrix and targets, and also link up to the disclosure. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about disclosure, but I think every one of you have actually heard of scope 1 and 2 and 3, all these quantitative things that is it's actually even more demanding from before, because from before probably it's more qualitative, but now you have to have a lot of quantitative targets and a lot of numbers coming up. So you'll be able to see a lot of risk modeling and other very technical aspects coming up. So this is from the Hong Kong EX. Now, also with for example, like SFC or Hong Kong MA, they are the two big regulators for the financial institutions, also for licensed stock. They also have a lot of different requirements. For example, for SFC, they are pushing a two-tier approach for smaller fund managers and also for large fund managers. They're actually requiring them to be the fund managers to actually do a lot, on disclosing and be more transparent. Again, you see that, they are actually also requiring fund managers to do disclosure on governance, on strategy, risk management, and disclosure. Now, the fund managers are very, very, they will have to do it, definitely, because that is their job, okay, first of all. And also, it's also a very big incentive for them to do it, because, if they do it really, better and in a better way, for their investors, definitely it will be a lot, more beneficial, and indirectly the funds will be behaving, even better. So there's a big incentive, and not just a requirement, for fund managers to be, really have to be, doing this sort of disclosure in a better manner. So you are actually seeing all this SFC specific requirement. The Hong Kong MA is also having a lot of, efforts to push the bank, because as an IFC, the banks really play a very important role in Hong Kong currently, and as it all has been, the trend. On December 2021, the Hong Kong MA has actually also issued the supervisory policy manual on this climate risk management as a very high level guidance for the AI, the banks, to be implementing their climate resilience measure. Okay, by the end of 2022. So we actually also see from our financial, service team, we actually also see a lot of the local banks in Hong Kong, whether be it local banks or the globally systematic important banks. They are actually all doing their required, the exercises to actually be able to comply, first of all, and also to be disclosing in their annual report. And I know a lot of them, even if they are not listed, and even if the deadline is not coming yet, they will be disclosing more than what is required by them, because they don't want to be lagging behind, and they really want to be able to appear well in front of Hong Kong MA. And the technical important part for that one financial institutions is the scope 3 emission. Okay, and that one is really a capability that is difficult to find, I would say, very technical, very specific, and it's also at a very, I would say, a very beginning, probably early stage, for this part of the world in Hong Kong and in China as well, to be really engaging in. Okay, so this is also another talent that will be strongly needed. Okay, so going, I'm not going to say about this because this is the large fund manager, as I've said, they have actually developed, a very detailed timeline. So you can see actually in next year, March to June, you'll be able to see all these large fund managers. They will be actually disclosing their Scope 1 and 2 GHG emissions. So a lot of such disclosures will be going on, and investors will be able to see how these funds are going and actually are performing in this aspect. Okay, coming into this slide, hopefully, I'm not going to detail just because a lot of them are not new stuff for you guys. I just want to say the IFRS Foundation also established what we call the ISSB, which is actually pushing for the whole set of ESG reporting standards, because we have been actually not been having a uniform sort of set of ESG standards for practitioners to follow. So I guess this is like an evolving sort of journey, and fortunately, until now, we've been able to see a lot of efforts and improvement, and the covering general requirements for sustainability-related financial information, and also the climate disclosure requirements are expected to be issued, hopefully, as early as possible in 2023. So you'll be actually seeing disclosure. IFRS Foundation are actually requiring from an accounting, perspective that all these companies, when they disclose their, information, when they have their annual report, when they have the sort of like the report disclosing, besides their financial information, they will also have to be disclosing also the sustainability related aspect, whether it be on structure, as I've actually described previously. Also the industry specific disclosure. As I see, I have the detail a lot on the banking side, on the financial institution side, but there are also a lot of other non-financial industry specific disclosure, depending on what industry you are in. So there will be industry specific disclosure as well. And then also the Scope 3, which is very demanding and also technically difficult. And that actually will be affecting a lot more on the financial service aspect, because Scope 3 is the, your downstream or upstream downstream, indirectly impacting you. So that is the more in relation to the financial institution and also the climate related scenario analysis. Now, so this is more on the disclosure aspect. Now, this is the background. So when we actually analyze on what sort of ESG talent are required for the future development, just like Loretta has indicated, I also have sort of like illustrated, from my own experience and also from our clients, perspective, what are actually some of the real eminently needed talent for in the industry and in Hong Kong right now, that is really needed to be able to do all those that our regulators are actually requiring. So on the left-hand side, you see that there is a ESG disclosure and data. Okay, definitely you'll be able to have people who can draft up those standards. Okay, who really know enough about that, and also you'll be able to use the data. Okay, be able to think of what data to be used. If you buy some data, how are you going to use this data and be able to do meaningful analysis. Be able to do, and also use this data in the model as well, and to come up with, useful quantitative figure to be able to demonstrate how good your company is doing. So that is one part. The second part is also the carbon market. You really have to do something, right? If you want to decarbonize and you really want to push, ahead with measures that you can actually help your company to be greener, right? You will have to do real measures. So we're expecting to have, carbon auditors, okay? If you, for example, if you say, I've done something really, which is really helpful, you have to have carbon auditors to really assess and really measure and attest on it. So people will be believing on that. We'll have talents with experience in carbon management, and also something that is really popular right now, also carbon credit transactions, and also engineers, as Loretta have also indicated. Those are very specific one. Now, the climate change strategy is the one that I've been talking about. We have actually a lot of demands right now for consultants to be helping our clients to do change strategy, traditional change strategy, roadmap, digital transformation to help even accelerating the strategy. A lot of board and governance members, they really want consultants to be involving and help the chief sustainability officer as well to do this. So a lot of financial modeling specialists also will be involved in this sort of change strategy, exercise. So that is the third element. We also see there will be a big demand for products. So I think that is more from the capital market side, probably, or for the banking side. You'll be able to see a lot of green finance professional to really come up with green products, come up, for example, with green bonds. With banking, come up with deposit or green insurance. Probably you are well aware of those popping up in Hong Kong. And for all these products, you will have to have second party opinion. So we'll have a lot of attestation, both pre-attestation and post-attestation. So this is also something that we as professional accountants can be doing. So this is the green and sustainable products that I see there is a bullish demand on. And not last but not least, the risk management that I've been talking about. So we will be expecting also compliance people that will be involving a lot on this risk management side. So these are the basic 5 ESG talents that I want to show briefly to you. I just also want to say geographically, even besides Hong Kong, we have been also analyzing and also observing there is a lot of potential also in GBA as well. On the GBA side, as well, definitely the reporting requirement is also increasing right now. Although the Shenzhen Stock Exchange right now is not mandatorily requiring companies to do very, very extensive disclosure, we also actually see Shenzhen Stock Exchange is actually recommending and encouraging Shenzhen listed companies to report on the ESG related disclosure. Again, nobody wants to lag behind. Everybody wants to show the very good side on it. So this is also one of the big phenomenon popping up in the GBA side. So there will be also as well a lot of demand on this sort of expertise to help the companies in Shenzhen, on Shenzhen side, on the mainland side, to do a lot more. And also last but not least, also they are actually requiring what we call the key emitting entities, like the power sector is also doing a lot on what we call the China emission trading system. That was actually launched in January 2021, specifically in the power sector, but they actually will be extending to other sectors as well. So once if this trading system that's even beyond GBA, that's actually the whole China, if that is going to be even more maturely set up, I guess that will actually even facilitating more people who will be actively involving in this market to trade and to implement and to really help push all these activities to go on. So this is geographic demand. Very last 2 slides is also talent challenges. We can actually discuss a lot more later on, but as what has been described also, we also see there's a big need for talent. I guess the universities have been doing a lot. We have been actually seeing a lot of universities also collaborating with probably businesses or with, for example, like Big Four, to do a lot more, more on this and setting up ESG related topics. We also see the industry is doing a lot and really, really striving very hard to educate, the public and also the industry to be learning more ESG topics, to understand, how important it is. And I guess for all these, soft campaigns going on and education, communication, I think that is a very important pillar. And as you can see also on the right-hand side, different think tanks or different society are actually also issuing a lot of courses. Now, we can discuss more on this sort of like a more short-term thing. They're actually popping up a lot of certification that, some of our current practitioners can actually be taking the course and trying to have some more intensive sort of like information be absorbed in right now. For the need of for them to be able to work on on their current job requirements right now, but probably that is not a long-term strategy. So these are more like short to medium term, I would say, some facilitation that our people can do. Just want to say, just some advertisement. EY has also been doing a lot, like what I've said. We've been collaborating also with PolyU, Polytechnic universities to do have an MOU on the setting up a a program to really encourage more things going on. For example, curriculum, and also be doing a lot of lot more other discussions and activities to proceed. So this is also one of the examples. And the last slide is just, some of the other stuff that we have been doing internally to accelerate people's mentality on understanding how important this is. And that also involves some of the things like upscaling their capability and also rescaling that we can discuss more in the Q&A session, Professor. So I guess this completes my my briefing.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you so much for updating the regulatory requirement for ESG, especially disclosure for the financial institution and banking sector. Also share your thoughts on the ESG talent requirements from the 5 area topic as well as geographic demands. And also you point out the challenges and opportunities for the ESG talent and collaborations with the universities. I think the audience will have more questions for you later after all the sharing, okay? So let's move on to the third speaker, Professor Warnock. Please share your thoughts.
Thank you very much. So I have a few slides too, but I'm going to try and go through them quickly because we've spent a lot of time already and we're supposed to finish at 4:30. So I'm going to try to go as quickly as I can through my slides. All right, so we've talked already at length about the developments in ESG. I want to take a step back and sort of put us back in time. So ESG is not a new thing. It's existed for more than 20 years. But it's suddenly burst into the scene probably during the COVID pandemic. So we at the University of Science and Technology started looking at it in a more holistic manner, I would say about 3 years ago. And in that 3 years, we've been developing a lot of initiatives related to green and sustainable finance. So you've all pointed out the gap in skills, which is hardly surprising because this is a relatively new development. I could draw a parallel with fintech, which was the big thing 5 years ago. And of course, you cannot suddenly find the talent you need in just a couple of years. You have to groom that talent and you have to educate your professionals. So we've looked at it from 2 angles. I would even add a third angle that I'll speak about briefly. One is undergraduate education. So that means really training young adults to become expert in sustainable and green finance. The other one is executive education. So Jenny Lee was in the previous panel and talked a little bit about all the initiative the Hong Kong Green Finance Education Association has developed, and we've partnered with them to offer a certificate in sustainable finance. So first, our bachelor degree is the first of its kind program in Hong Kong. I think also in Asia, and it's very unique because it's an interdisciplinary program. So it's jointly offered by the Business School and the Division of Environment and Sustainability, which means that we have business school professors teaching business and Division of Environment and Sustainability professors teaching about environment and sustainability. So it's very interdisciplinary because climate finance is by nature very interdisciplinary. And we have a global perspective with local relevance. We also build our students' skills in terms of professional and social responsibility and ethics, as well as communication and engagement, and try to foster creativity and critical thinking. Our curriculum is extremely rigorous. It combines the same requirements in finance courses as our BBA in finance or quantitative finance, and also very strong sustainable and environment courses so that our students, when they graduate, will be very much interdisciplinary. To make sure we stay updated on industry developments, we have 5 industry specialists on our advisory committee, coming from HSBC, Schroders, Crédit Agricole, CIB, UBS, and Pamela used to be at Fung Academy, is now in Singapore with ICC. We also promote a lot of co-curricular activities which are designed to keep our students engaged with industry. So we have industry speakers coming on a monthly basis. We have company visits. We have students attending various events. And we are developing internship and corporate project opportunities. So that's on the undergraduate side. On the existing professional side, we've partnered with HKGFA, Hong Kong Green Finance Association. We've offered a pilot program, Certificate in Sustainable Finance. And we're going to have a second iteration of that coming up in the spring. This is the program. So we aim to cover all the fundamental basics. So that's the industry young professionals can touch up on the requirements. And then we explain how to structure sustainable finance products and designing sustainable portfolio. Then we look at risk and carbon markets. So these are some photos from that. I will also mention, this is the end of my show, I will also mention that we at the HKUST Business School are partnering with HSBC and Deloitte and the Hong Kong Institute of Directors in the Climate Governance Initiative Hong Kong, which is designed to educate board level members on issues of climate change. So we're tackling 3 different aspects of sustainability education, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that we have, but I'm trying to keep the time really short so that we have a chance to answer questions from the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much for sharing your educational experience from Hong Kong UST for undergraduate and professional certificate education on ESG tenets. So next we have Professor Harry Wu. Please share your thoughts.
All right, so now it's coming out. Can you see it? It's moving?
Yes.
Okay, good. Actually, sorry, let me see why I cannot. Okay. Professor Veronique just introduced the undergraduate education in sustainable investing or green finance. And I'd like to compliment Professor Veronique's courage by introducing the graduate education in ESG, both in Hong Kong and globally. Here we also call the postgraduate programs in ESG. So actually, this is basically based on my personal experience. In the past year, I have been involved in developing a ESG TPG program in Lingnan University. TPG means taught postgraduate program, which is a 1-year full-time program. So actually, when we started, we thought actually maybe this ESG-related postgraduate programs there will be a lot, because the ESG has been a hot topic for quite a few years. But to our surprise, we didn't find so many or as many as we expected. So we did find some programs in a particular aspect of ESG, but not on this whole ESG, as a whole concept, right? So this is basically what we found in Hong Kong. That's about this information about half a year ago. I'm not sure whether we have more now. So these are existent programs related to ESG in Hong Kong. It's pretty new information, only about half a year ago. We have, we have University in Hong Kong U, PolyU, Baptist, and Hong Kong MU, and PolyU has two actually. PolyU has two related programs, but you can see their programs are mainly about one particular aspect. Hong Kong U is about leadership and governance. Mainly it's about governance. And the second one from PolyU also about the corporate governance. As Professor Wu told me, it's a part-time, 2-year part-time program. And Baptist has the environment, basically environment and public health. This is one aspect of ESG. And Metropolitan University has also environment focused. And another program from PolyU is about urban development. PolyU has a related department. So actually, that's all we find. I'm talking about postgraduate programs in Hong Kong, right? So including the one that I just mentioned in Lingnan, which we call it Master of Science in ESG Management, ESGM, which will be having the first batch of students in the coming year. It's forthcoming in 1 year. So that's what I have been involved in. And another one is the Master of Science in ESG Sustainability, which will be offered by PolyU also next year. As that, these are forthcoming programs about ESG. You can see these forthcoming programs are a little bit comprehensive, more comprehensive than the existing programs. This program for one aspect, either corporate governance or environment issues. And like Professor Veronique just mentioned, the undergraduate program and UST is mainly about finance, sustainable finance. So, okay, that's a general picture of the education in Hong Kong. I will give you more information about this if we have time. So, and I will just give you examples from Lingnan. Now, before this was so-called ESGM program, and what did we offer in the past? About the courses related to ESG. Actually, it comes from 3 programs. All of them are master programs. We have master accountancy program. We have 3 related courses offered. We also have a master of business innovation and entrepreneurship. We have 2 courses related to that. And we also have a risk insurance management program offered by the Department of Finance and Insurance, which also offers a course related to ESG. So among them, most of them also about one aspect, right? The legal issues, right? The disclosure issue, the accounting aspect, and there are 2 ESG, cover the 2 courses covering the ESG in general. That's the situation in Lingnan, the current situation. In the coming year, in our new ESG management program, we will have this curriculum, which is kind of a little bit systematic and comprehensive. I don't want to read through this. Comparing with the undergraduate program in ESG sustainable financing, Professor Veronique just mentioned, you see we have a short list because this is just a 1-year program, not a 4-year undergraduate program. But we have kind of focused. We have the specific focus in Hong Kong and mainland China. We also have, ESG investing and the business, a practice in business, and the marketing, big data, supply chain. I think some of them are overlapping with the UST undergraduate program. So this is the general picture of the current situation of graduate education in Hong Kong. And for the existing 5 programs in here, I also had a summary here. It's too small. We don't have to read through this. So we have all these detailed information, including their key causes, even their tuition. We have, because this is information that we collected, right, when we develop our program. Okay, we also actually look at the related program outside of Hong Kong. I'm not sure whether I have time to show you. Actually, I prepared the attachments, but I don't think we have time to show you. So actually, the basic impression is there are not as many as we may imagine. Okay, so we basically spent several months searching for related programs globally, right? In North America, in Europe, in Australia, right? In mainland China, we basically did a very comprehensive study, but we found similar picture as in Hong Kong. Okay, even though, you know, maybe to our practitioners, so we may think, you know, ESG education should have been in existence for a long time, but actually it is. But the one with the longest history would be related to environment, especially in Europe. And the ESG concept as a whole actually is relatively new. And the ESG education is also relatively new, right? So this is the information that I want to share with you. Last slide, I give you some survey results. Also, we did a survey when we want to know whether people will be interested in our new program, right? So we did a survey by ourselves. We see that more than 50% of the people who took the survey only had a general understanding of ESG, not a good level of knowledge, a general. According to my own experience, you know, I have been teaching 2 ESG courses for in the past 2 years, and some of my students did not actually hear about ESG before he or she registered for the class, right? ESG never heard about this, right? So basically, it's also I feel it's also our, you know, as a professor at the university, you know, people in the university, our responsibilities to basically express the ESG concept out, right? To make more people understand, get aware of, understand the importance of the ESG, right? So you can see among the people who took the survey, almost 80% were interested in taking a master degree in ESG related. I mean, maybe not only in Lingnan, but also maybe higher demand for other universities. And among them, almost 70%, they are not currently working in the field of ESG, but they believe it's useful. If they learn some ESG knowledge, it's useful. And only less than 7%, is 1/10 of this number, is currently working in the field of ESG, not so many. This echoes to, you know, Loretta and, you know, our Prof and Jasmine's, you know, the information they gave us. There's high demand. Not so many people are working in a field related to ESG. And the transition to the ESG field within the firms, it will be too slow, So there should be a high demand for the talents of ESG. And about 14% interest in program because of the interest in ESG management for self-improvement purpose. So actually, I talked with my students. Many of them are millennials, you know, born after 2000. Actually, they love ESG. They love to protect the environment just by nature, because it is not like us. So we need to try to understand why protecting the environment is important. But for them, it's nature. We should protect our planet Earth. We should protect the environment. So they just for self-improvement purpose. This number, even though not so big, but actually is pretty good. It's pretty good. That's the basic information I want to share with you about the graduate education in ESG in Hong Kong and other fields and other areas. And we have, I believe, after these 4 presentations, we will have a conclusion that there indeed is a gap between the demand of talents and the supply of the talents from the universities. So we do need to work together to try to narrow this gap as soon as possible. Right. So that's something I want to share with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Wu, for sharing your thoughts on the graduate education on ESG. So next we move on to the Q&A section. Due to the time limit, we try to finish in 10 minutes. So anyone have questions, feel free to type in the chat box or raise your hand. Let me ask the first question. So we heard from both the industry and the academic. So I would like to ask the Jasmine and Loretta, in your mind, you heard the Professor Wu and Professor Warnock introduced the undergraduate and graduate education in Hong Kong in terms of ESG. In your view, do you think any gap or kind of expectation for education from the industry perspective? Loretta or Jasmine?
Yeah, I think I can go first. It's actually very informative what I just learned from Professor Wu and also Dr. Lafominus. I think I guess what's really lacking at the moment, which I believe that the programs that has been offered by UST and also Lingnan and also PolyU have been considering this, is this interdisciplinary approach of doing things, which I think is actually very important. Frankly speaking, when I was just coming across and talking with the clients and stuff like that, I believe that oftentimes people take ESG discretely into like different components. Oh, somehow some of the people will think that all I need to think about is just reporting. I need to get the report right and everything is done. And some of those we consider that all I need to think about is decarbonization. Once I get decarbonization done, it's done. And then there is another aspect thinking that, oh, it's all about all these green bonds, etc. So I don't think that, people nowadays have a comprehensive view of what that is. But I mean, having thought about, having this interdisciplinary approach, I think is actually very important. And also, I'm very glad to hear that there are programs offered for the board level, because a lot of it, Professor Wu said it very well, that a lot of those young people, it's just spontaneous. They think that they should protect the environment, think about ESG. Sorry to say this, a lot of the older people do not think so. So I think it's a very good time that we could actually, give them it's upskilling in this in this matter. So much for my sharing. Thank you.
Thank you. Jasmine, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Loretta sharing, and I completely agree with Dr. Professor Wu just now when you say there's a gap. I definitely think there is a gap, and I personally am more concerned on probably the shorter term, this gap, how it's going to be filled out, because I do think we're needing a lot of different capability right now to build all these things, to build a good foundation, and to also help our clients, right? Help our companies to comply with the requirement. But this is very obvious. There is not enough people here right now to really be able to do this, especially because, as what has been said, it's interdisciplinary and it's very specific, industry specific. So it's not easy job. I guess by just probably completing a course or some sort of like a certification course, I guess that's probably not enough. But concurrently, we will have to do this now to be able to comply and to be able to work out this. So I do think there's an imminent need that we'll have to be resolving somehow within this 1 or 2 years, because this is a very important timing. If we really want to have ESG be able to get on well. So I agree there's a gap right now. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that the second question I would like to ask still Loretta and Jasmine, I would like to take this great opportunity to ask you questions. So you have been working with the industry for many years and know the market leads. So in your mind, what are the major challenges for industries, for firms to build up their tenants? To find the qualified tenants, what are the challenges that the current companies face? Jasmine, maybe you can start first.
Yeah, I just start by saying it's difficult because as we have all probably we all agree, the talent pool is not really that huge, to be honest, especially in Hong Kong. Not talking about COVID, nobody wants to come, Even if we open the market and open the border and there's no restriction, I guess it's still very difficult. Probably we'll have to do a lot more to attract talents to come. And a lot of ESG talents are actually from the outside, in America or maybe in Europe. I know that part of the world is actually getting a little bit, earlier on with this topic. So we will have to have incentive for these people to come and to lead us through. Also, I think it's also very, it's quite challenging for example, for firm people, if they want to be rescaled, or if they know a bit, and for example, they are from engineering degree and other, even for a mental science degree, if they really want to do consulting engagements right now in the firm, they're not just requiring, they're not just needing what they have learned from the university. They will have to add on other stuff in order to be able to get those consulting advice to our clients. So depending on what industry as well. So I do think it's a lot of crossover. I would say you will have to have environmental science foundation, the capability, but you also have to, for example, with the corporate governance or the risk management side, or when you talk with the bank, you have to do, probably you have to know a lot, something about the modeling bit, and vice versa. If you are a modeler, right now people will say, okay, what about embedding the ESG stuff into that model, which you have built, for example. And then you just cannot rely on a whole bunch of environmental science degree people to do it for you. It's a lot of collaboration. So I do think this entire team will be quite challenging to form at this moment. So that is my gut feel right now, Professor.
Thank you. Loretta?
Well, maybe I could be quick on this. I agree with Jasmine that it's actually very hard to form the team. However, I guess there are two things here. One is that I think as corporations who is actually operating in the real business world, they need to know what they need. They need to set clear objective, and that needs to be a tone from the top. So I definitely believe that, directors, board level, top management, they need to understand what they really want to achieve first. I guess that's why I think that point of the education is important. Secondly, I definitely agree with Jasmine that seek for advice from consulting firm would be a very good beginning. Because I mean, if you in the view of building up your own talents, maybe you may not be able to build it soon enough. But consulting firms, because they leverage experience worldwide, we have like overseas. Well, I'm not trying to sell, but that is quite true. You have like overseas experience, etc. We can actually collaborate all these efforts so that the corporations can make use of those consulting firms to define what they need, and in the meantime, build up its own talents for executing those implementation plan. I think that is the way to go. Otherwise, it's very difficult to fill in the gap. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I would like to ask Dr. Wononik. So you have been already engaged in undergraduate education of ESG tenants students. So in your experience, what's the major challenge you have faced so far in terms of educate the ESG students?
I haven't faced any yet because our program is so young, and we are blessed with very talented young people. So our first intake is on campus right now. They are incredibly enthusiastic, and so far they're going to the foundation courses. So far, no challenges.
Good to know. Okay, thank you. So I would ask a last question for Professor Wu. So you have done a lot of research on ESG. So in your view, how do you think how research on ESG can help the ESG education?
All right, so this research, actually, I want to talk it from two aspects very briefly. The first aspect is not only about the education to our students, but also education to our CEOs, just like Loretta just mentioned. From tone from the top is very important. So if you really want a firm to embrace ESG, to really emphasize ESG, you need to educate their top managers. So not just because the regulators require us to disclose, we just do it, we just disclose it, right? We just keep the KPI, that's fine. But I personally, as a CEO, I don't believe in ESG, just like Donald Trump. Donald Trump does not believe in environment protection. So educating them is important. Of course, we do not have a close interact with them, but we can deliver this message from our students, through our students. So and the research basically tell our students, all the managers, ESG is important. For example, whether you want to spend a lot of money reducing the carbon emissions. All right. So now we have two basic approaches to it. One is just a mandatory cut. You have to cut your carbon emission by 20% within 1 year or 2 years. That's one approach. The other approach, just like Jesse emphasized, disclosure. I ask you to disclose your carbon emissions, right? So this is a little bit soft approach, but at the research, we want to know that whether requiring a firm to disclose its carbon emissions also works to reduce carbon emissions, right? So actually, some people believe yes, some people believe no. So as a research, we want to find solid evidence for that. And if we present this solid evidence, yes, disclosing carbon emission will have the firm reduce the emission levels. Or if you reduce your emission levels, maybe you can enjoy some financial benefit. For example, you can reduce your cost of capital. So if you borrow from a bank, maybe you can enjoy a low interest rate. If you tell this to the CEOs, maybe they will be more willing to really, take care of this carbon emission issues. Oh, because not only because it's our responsibility to protect the environment, reduce carbon, but also it will also be beneficial to the firm. But not all CEOs, they believe in this. So we show them evidence. Actually, according to my own experience in my class, I also show evidence to students. Actually, I did not show evidence. I asked the students to find out the evidence from the academic research. So they don't have to know too much about the details, the technical ones, but they just present the result, the conclusions, because all the conclusions from academics actually are based on solid evidence. It's just not arguments. It's really, it's really coming from the data, right? Coming from the facts, and we have to establish the causality, all these. So I just want our students and also the practitioner to appreciate the importance of ESG. Everybody talking about reducing carbon emission is important. Carbon emission reduction is important. Why? How? In what concrete ways? And why this is important to our CEOs? And we tell our students that later on, given time, our students will also tell somebody else, including their supervisors, right? So, gradually, hopefully, we can have, build up this, this idea. Maybe we protect the environment. It's a mutual beneficial agreement, both to the environment, to the public, but also to the firm. Yeah, that's just one example about the application. We can discuss more.
I concur your thoughts. I think it's important to link the academic research to reality and to educate our students is very important. So we are running out of time, so we're not going to take more questions. Sorry for that. So let me make the closing remark for our conference. So, dear all, thank you so much for attending our second PolyU PASS conference on ESG and sustainable finance. Time flies. I cannot believe it's almost the end of our conference. Today we have 4 intensive and insightful discussions, including green finance, ESG practice, carbon neutrality, and ESG talent education. I think myself, I hope you also have learned a lot of new insights from today's conference. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the speakers for your time and for your insightful sharing. In addition, I would like to thank our collaborating organization, Hong Kong Investor Relations Association, and our supporting organization, CPA Australia and Hong Kong Institute of CPA, for their support. I also would like to thank our colleagues, our faculty, and CSF team for organizing this wonderful event. Thank you all. Finally, I would like to emphasize a couple of points. First of all, as Professor Wu mentioned, PolyU is going to offer the first master Master of Science in ESG. I think this is the first in kind in Hong Kong. So we aim to educate their tenants to lead the market, to meet the market needs. So if we are interested, you're free to examine the requirement and the information on our website. We are right now actively recruiting their students. The second, I think that although this is the final event for our past seminar, so our CSAP Center at Hong Kong Poly U will not stop. We will continue to organize such kind of events to promote the knowledge transfer and research and education on ESG and sustainability, okay? So we look forward to more collaborations with the government, with the industry, with organizations. Please feel free to reach us if you have any suggestions or any thoughts, initiatives. We look forward to the collaboration. So finally, I would wish you a happy holiday and a healthy and productive 2023. So see you and take care.